I like to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace and safety to the hopefully lack all the Akim scattered across the four corners, pushing his word in sincerity and in truth. This is 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 20. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scripture is of any private interpretation. And the prophecy I'm going to go into in this lesson is in the book of Obadiah. And the private interpretation that we was taught by our elders at GMS is that this is referring to outer space. All right. This is referring to Esau. All right. The so-called white man going out of space. All right. And I just heard on a recent video that the elder did referring to this, what I'm about to go into, as Esau going into outer space in 1969. All right. And this is not referring to that because, first of all, there's no outer space. Only thing above the firmament is the throne of the Most High, man, and the angels, man, as the scripture saith. All right? As the scripture saith. There's no outer space. There's no galaxy. The stars, all right? The sun, the moon, all right? It's all inside the firmament, all right? And through previous lessons, we proved that point. All right. The scriptures don't support planets. All right. There's no planets. All right. There's no outer space, man. Only thing above the firmament is the Lord's throne and the angels, man. That's it. All right. According to scriptures, man. All right. So this is Obadiah 1 and 1. And I'm going to read this for context. The point is in verse 4. So it says, the vision of Obadiah. Thus said the Lord power concerning Edom, the Edomites, the so-called white man, woman, and child. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Referring to the Edomites. Okay. Verse 3, the pride of thy heart. And that's basically what I'm gonna basically deal with in this lesson, the pride of Edom. All right. But like I say, the private interpretation is that that the so-called, that this scripture is referring to, is that the so-called white man has been out of space. Okay. So it says, the pride of thy heart have deceived thee, thou that dwelleth in the cliffs of the rocks, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Verse 4, which is the point. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars. Now, the private interpretation that we was taught by our elders is that this is referring to 1969, when the so-called white man, all right, so-called went to the moon. All right. So by teaching that doctrine, that implies that the so-called white man went to the moon, which that's magic, man. All right. It goes into that in Isaiah chapter 47. All right. When it talks about the astrologers, all right, and the stargazers, meaning the so-called white man and his astrology. So it says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down to the ground. And that's referring to pride, man. Okay? That's not referring to the so-called white man going out of space, man. Okay? Because like I say, the private interpretation that we was taught from my elders at GMS was that this is referring to the so-called white man going into outer space in 1969. And after he completed that mission of going to the moon and going into outer space, and that's when the Lord started bringing his kingdom down. All right. And that's a private interpretation. Okay. Now let's get the first precept. We're going to go to the book of Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 11. And it says, thy pomp is brought down to the grave. And thy pomp, let's look up that pomp. Meaning the exaltation, the pride. Okay. Just like we read in Obadiah. All right. Arrogance. All right. In a bad sense. And we all know the so-called white man, woman, and child is arrogant. All right. And it says arrogancy, uh, pride, proud, swelling. All right, these are characteristics of the so-called white man, the Edomites. So it says, thy pomp, thy pride, all right, just like we read in Obadiah, is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows to the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou falling from heaven, O Lucifer? All right, so this is not referring to the so-called, Obadiah wasn't referring to the so-called white man going into outer space. All right, the Bible don't support outer space, man. All right, there's nothing above the firmament but the Lord throne, man, and the angels and Yahweh Shai, man. All right, thus saith the Lord. All right, the scriptures don't support in outer space. That's witchcraft, man. That's magic from the so-called white man. Babylon, man, got you guys confused. Okay, so this is the point. It says, how art thou falling from heaven, O Lucifer? All right, referring to the so-called white man, the Edomites. All right, it says, son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which dideth weaken the nations. All right, meaning they're going to be taken out of their rulership, man. All right, that's what Obadiah was referring to, man. Okay, verse 13, it says, for thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of the power. All right, this is the so-called white man mind's frame, man. This is his spirit. This is not referring to the so-called white man going into outer space, landing on the moon. All right, so it says, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the north, in the sides of the north. Verse 14, this is the main point. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Okay, so this Obadiah wasn't referring to the so-called white man going into outer space in 1969. All right, when he so-called landed on the moon. This is what these guys is implying, man. All right, because John 14:2, we was taught as well, all right, from my elders at GMS, that was referring to planets. Those mansions are referring to planets. All right, and I did a breakdown on it and gave you the correct understanding on what John 14 was pertaining to. Now, verse 14 again, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Okay, so that's what Obadiah was referring to in verse 4, when it says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. Okay, this is what the Lord was showing Obadiah, man. He wasn't showing him the so-called white man going into outer space. There's no outer space. Okay, the only thing above the firmament is the Lord's throne, man. The angels, Yahweh Shai, man. Okay, the scriptures don't support outer space, man. Okay, so let's get another precept in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. And it says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there be a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, referring to the Edomites, man, referring to old Lucifer. All right, Esau, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. This is what Obadiah was referring to, man. Not the so-called white man going into outer space and landing on the moon. The moon is inside the firmament with the stars, with the sun, man. Only thing above that firmament is the Lord, man. Nobody has ever been outside the firmament. All right. So the private interpretation of Obadiah that we was taught, all right, is implying that there's an outer space, It's implying that the so-called white man have left the firmament. All right. It's implying that the so-called white man has landed on the moon. All right. That's a private interpretation. All right. That's heresies, man. All right. The scriptures don't support that at all. So it says, who opposeth, referring to the Edomites, and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. Now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. All right, because the so-called white man is being revealed as being the devil, as being Babylon. Okay, verse 7. For the mystery of iniquity doeth already work, referring to the so-called white man, because at this time when Paul was speaking these words, the so-called white man was in power, the Romans. All right, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way, and then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. All right, the brightness of his coming referring to those chariots. Okay, so now let's get another precept. This is Revelations chapter 12 and verse 7. And it says, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, referring to the so-called white man, okay? And the dragon fought and his angels. And the dragon angels is his armies, all right? Reading on, and prevailed not. This is how the Lord is going to bring them down to the ground, okay? Neither was their place found any more in heaven. All right, because the so-called white man exalted himself above the Most High. He tries to be like the Most High. All right, this is what Obadiah was referring to, man. It wasn't referring to him going outer space, man, because Obadiah knew it wasn't no outer space, man. All right, the scriptures don't support that. All right, this outer space philosophy wasn't around when Obadiah was getting this vision. Okay, this came into play when the so-called white man came into power. All right, so it says, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. All right, so this is what Obadiah was referring to, man. So now let's go back to the book of Obadiah, and we're going to read it. We're going to read it with understanding. All right, without any private interpretations. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom. So the Lord, in other words, these guys is implying that the Lord showed Obadiah a vision of the so-called white man going outer space. All right. When the scriptures don't support that, man. We're in the firmament along with the stars. All right. The sun and the moon. Okay, nobody ever been outside the firmament. All right. So the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom, the so-called white man, the devil. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou greatly despised. Referring to Esau. All right. The pride. All right. The exaltation, all right, the pomp of thy heart have deceived thee, thou that dwelleth in the cliffs of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, in his spirit, who shall bring me down to the ground? All right, the Lord said he's going to destroy them with the brightness of his coming. All right. It says, this is the point, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thy set thy nest amongst the stars. All right. And like I say, the private interpretation that we all was taught. All right. I heard this on the recent video, as recent as yesterday. All right. That this is referring to 1969, when the so-called white man so-called landing on the moon, and so-called went out of space. All right. This is what these guys is implying. All right. This is what these guys is teaching. All right. And this is not the vision that the Lord gave Obadiah. All right. So it says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh. All right. And basically that's the point. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.